Think about it, it must be higher love, down in the heart or hidden in the stars above. Without it, life is wasted time. Look inside your heart and I will look inside of mine. Things look so bad everywhere. In this whole world, what is fair? We walk blind and try to see, falling behind in what could be.
Bring me a higher love. Bring me a higher love. Bring me a higher love. Where's that higher love I've been thinking of?
Worlds are turning, we're just hanging on, facing our fears and standing out there alone. We're yearning, something's
Real for me.
there must be someone who is
Feeling for me.
things look so bad everywhere. In this whole world, what is fair? We walk blind and try to see, falling behind in what could be.
Bring me a higher love. Bring me a higher love. Bring me a higher love. Where's that higher love I've been dreaming of? Bring me a higher love. Bring me a higher love. Bring me a higher love. Where's that higher love I've been thinking of?
I'm cool. I got it. Yes. Oh, hey. Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I hope everyone got a sheet and coffee or water over at the bar. You can sign up for the weekly or support collective financially back at the support and connect table. We have a slide for that as well, apparently. Also, welcome to our online community. Kenny, is anyone online?
Yeah, Dave Malinowski's not feeling well, but he's watching with us. And Sarah Lane is not chatting, but she actually helped get the thing running because it wasn't quite running before.
Super. So if you are lurking out there online, sign in with your Google login. It will be a lot more fun for everyone. Hyro from Canada. We are international and global. Awesome, right? Fantastic. So jump on and subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/wearecollectivechurch. Hurricane relief updates. So Kate will give us an update in a moment. Okay. A couple specific hurricane things. Sarah and Terry got flooded, 3 feet of water, and are doing a total gut on their house. And they have a GoFundMe fund set up, and Kate and John have a GoFundMe fund set up, right? So there will be a blog post this week with links to both of those GoFundMe accounts, pictures, and other ways we can be supportive. Kate, did you want to come up and say anything? Yeah, we wanted to come up and say things. Then do that.
Hi. Okay, I'm very nervous about doing this. I don't like being in front of crowds. So John and I have been a part of this community for several years now, and throughout our marriage, we've had sort of 2 times where, circumstance has kind of left us feeling rather hopeless and down. And the first of those was several years ago after I'd had my second consecutive miscarriage, and everybody here at Collective was extremely supportive of us and immediately started bringing us meals once I was out of the hospital, and was so supportive and never ever tried to minimize our grief. And the second was a week ago when a water oak fell on our home during Hurricane Matthew and basically split our house in 2, kind of leaving us homeless. Luckily, we're staying with our in-laws right now, so we have somewhere to stay. But the thing that we're so grateful for is the very next day after this happened, as soon as the storm cleared, so many of you were out at our house cutting down branches to remove some of the weight from the tree. First United Methodist was also out to help, laying down tarps and plywood covering up the damage until we could get the tree removed, which it is now. And until we could start repairs on our home. And all of you were so supportive in helping us move items into my in-laws' house, and I just can't thank you all enough for that. And as if that wasn't enough, so many of you offered to allow us to stay in your homes with you, and also donated to the GoFundMe to help us cover the deductible for our insurance. And I just couldn't be more grateful. And sorry. We talk about love a lot here, and about all the various manifestations of that. And you all have shown us that in so many ways. And we're just so thankful to be a part of this community. Because it's really not a question of if you guys are gonna help when we're down. You guys are just always there, and we couldn't be more grateful for that. So thank you.
So I think that just about says it. Oh, and she made cupcakes. So there's cupcakes. So again, both of those GoFundMe campaigns will be made available for all of us, and it'll be sort of clear how we can continue to help as a community in hurricane relief efforts. And thank you so much, Kate, for speaking so eloquently and so beautifully. Harvest Festival. Fill out an orange sheet and sign up for a time to volunteer. It's next Saturday from 10 to 3. Also, the reading group Meeting Jesus Again. It is not too late to join. It meets Wednesdays at 5:30 here. It's a great complement to our Sunday night look at the letter of 1 John. So that's still available and open if you want to come out and do that. Also, Rocky Horror Picture Show to support Collective Cares is Thursday at 8 at Cafe Da Vinci. That's another opportunity. So for more details on these events and more, download the Collective Church app by searching for Collective Church in the App Store. Sign up for the weekly email us anytime, info@wearecollectivechurch.com. So whether you're here with us online or here in the flesh, welcome.
We value highly the metaphor journey. We're different people from different places and backgrounds, representing a multi-generational community, and we've traveled different paths. So we agree not to make assumptions about the person across from us, next to us, or in conversation with us. We challenge ourselves to be sensitive, knowing that this community includes a diverse group of people, from lifelong followers of Jesus to people who are just now open to the idea that God might exist. We strive to avoid offense, ask good questions, articulate and explain our responses. We don't assume fluency in Bible, spirituality, or church language, because we believe the message of Jesus is not for Christianity, but for humanity. So we do everything in the spirit of love and grace.
I had the strangest feeling. Your world's not all it seems. So tired of misconceiving what else this could have been. I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I believe everything you're trying to say to me. So open up my eyes, tell me I'm alive. This is never gonna go away if I'm gonna have to guess what's on your mind. Say something, something like you love me. 'Cause you wanna move away from the noise of this place. Well, I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I believe. I don't even know if I wanna believe anything you're trying to say to me. So open up my eyes, tell me I'm alive. This is never gonna go away if I'm gonna have to guess what's on your mind. So open up my eyes, tell me I'm alive. This is never gonna go away if I'm gonna have to guess what's on your mind.
So, we've been sitting quietly and meditating or slowing ourselves down for a couple of years now, at every time we come together on Sunday. And I'm curious, how is it going? How are you feeling about it? Does your head get in the way? Do you think too much? Do you believe that it's making an impact? Do you think it's a bunch of hokum? Is it just a time to feel your body a little bit more? Is it a connection with God? Is it to do your grocery list? I mean, what? So I'd like to hear from you. Gives you more patience? Okay. So you use that technique sitting at the doctor's office. So in times where you have to wait, it's a way to keep the mind occupied or unoccupied. Okay, Kate?
I'm a chronic overthinker, and so for me, I have a hard time quieting my mind during that moment. But just the practice of trying to sort of push those thoughts aside and silence and still myself makes me realize how many sort of just unimportant things I'm worrying about, and I think it helps me throughout the week to kind of let some of those things go. So I don't know that I get my mind quieted, but the process is helpful.
Okay. So you can note the thoughts and not necessarily be carried away by them. Okay. Others? Yes.
I just find it very refreshing because most church services I've been in, there's no silence. It's a song, it's a this, it's a that, it's a this. There's no silence. And I find it a great opportunity to just really listen. And I have a sacred word I use, Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I'm distracted, I go back to that.
Nice.
And it's just, there are no words really because it's a gift.
Okay. So it's a bit of an experience. It's almost nameless, right? Okay. Yes, Steve.
So
Robert.
I teach 8th grade, and when my kids come back after lunch, they are out of their minds because they're jacked on all of the stuff they've been eating. And one day last year, I needed to do it for myself.
Mm-hmm.
but it helps me in here, especially when I don't have to play a song.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting is that even though kids who, they give the other space, right? They'll be quiet. They may not believe in it, but they're respectful enough to let it happen.
And if you spend any time in a middle school, you know sitting still is completely counter to anything that
Yeah. Yeah. So who's had the experience, and probably everyone will raise their hand, where you're like meditating, but you're like doing everything else, right? Yeah. So it's all you have to give yourself enough respect and the process respect because it may take root. It may happen. It may bear fruit at some point. And even that dissonance that you have is useful. There's a technique, it's a Western Buddhist kind of thing, where, and we've talked about it in here before, is when a thought comes up, is you take a Post-it note and you note what kind of feeling, this is a mental formation, this is not an actual Post-it note. So you take a Post-it note and you write frustration. If the thought is around frustration, or if it's planning, or if it's anger, or if it's love, or if it's lust, or if it's peace. Whatever it is, you take and write on your Post-it note and put it on there and then let it go. Because our minds, even in perfect kind of meditative state, are still kind of churning out noise. And that's why we come back to a word. That's why we might come back to a breath. That's why we give ourselves patience and let the space happen. Because those mental formations will come. And they will be frustrating. And you will be carried away by them, and then you'll come back. But you believe, maybe, that experience will happen at some point in time. So let's sit silently together for about 4 minutes. And either concentrate on your breath, counting to 3, and then start over, or finding a word that you're very comfortable with and repeating it. We'll sit in silence for 4 minutes.
So reading from 1 John chapter 2, 18 to 25. Dear children, this is the last hour, and as you have heard that the Antichrist is coming, even now many Antichrists have come. This is how we know it is the last hour. They went out from us, but they did not really belong to us. For if they had belonged to us, they would have remained with us. But their going showed that none of them belonged to us. But you have an anointing from the Holy One, and all of you know the truth. I do not write to you because you do not know the truth, but because you do know it, and because no lie comes from the truth. Who is the liar? It is whoever denies that Jesus is the Christ. Such a person is the Antichrist, denying the Father and the Son. No one who denies the Son has the Father. Whoever acknowledges the Son has the Father also. As for you, see that what you have heard from the beginning remains in you. If it does, you also will remain in the Son and in the Father. And this is what he promised us, eternal life.
Hey, my name is Ben. I have to give a sermon about that. When I think of the Antichrist, I always think of Ghostbusters, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man taking the best of us and corrupting it. The Antichrist. All right. I'm having a lot of fun with this letter. I sometimes do ask myself why I chose to go through the whole thing. So when studying the Bible, there are some ways that you can get clarity about a specific word or phrase or an idea, and it starts by going to all the other places in a particular text where the authors might use that word or phrase and how they used it. Then you can move out from there and sort of look in the entire Bible. Where else does a word or phrase appear? How is it used? And then if there are other contemporary texts that use the word or phrase, you could look at those and sort of see how it's used around that time period. And if we do that for these phrases, the last hour and the Antichrist, if we go to every other place that these phrases are used, what we find is nothing. Nothing. They appear only in the letter of 1 John. There are other phrases like the last day or the last or the end of the age, but the last hour is only used here. The point being, it's almost impossible to have any idea what the author is actually talking about here. It does have a feel of sort of an eschatological or like end of the age, end of the world kind of feel to it that is somehow related to antichrists, or we could say people that don't think that Jesus is the Christ, the Messiah. Christ is a Greek translation of the Hebrew word Messiah. We're going to talk more about that next week. Specifically for John's community, they believe that Jesus has revealed eternal life or unconditional life, an experience of oneness with God, God consciousness we've sort of talked about. And we have been reading this letter, 1 John, which is a letter that's written from and for the community shaped by the Gospel of John, so one of the 4 accounts of Jesus in the Bible. And even if you haven't been here for anything leading up to tonight, you may have picked up on the fact that there's a wee scuffle going on within this community. There's some theological debate, there's tension, and many scholars say there's actually a split. One group has left this community. Some scholars say that this chunk that's left, and we don't know really much more about it than this, other than we can infer a little bit from the letter what they're disagreeing on. And even though I can't find what I'm about to share in commentaries about the letter of 1 John, the passage seems to me to make this actually pretty clear. So I'm going to kind of go off the reservation. This is maybe outside the tradition, or at least what I can find, but it makes a lot of sense to me in the context of the letter. So the John community, we know, existed for generations after the historical Jesus within the Jewish liturgical community, temple, synagogue, that kind of deal. We know this. And then at some point, prior to the version of the Gospel of John that we have, which is probably the 3rd edition, the 3rd edit of the Gospel of John, prior to that, this community was excommunicated from the Jewish synagogue, the Jewish community. There were some irreconcilable differences. John's community was asked to leave. You no longer belong in this group. So This is when John and the John community move out of town. They move into some caves at a place called Qumran, and they embrace a form of Jewish mysticism, which is where they begin to essentially universalize the Jesus message for everyone, not just for the Jewish faith, but for everyone. But I think one of the major arguments that led to their excommunication is actually still playing itself out, such that these leaders now, generations later, feel like they've still got to clarify the Jesus community as compared to the Jewish community. And these now, remember, these are mystics living in caves outside of town. Christianity doesn't exist yet. They have no religious home base. So they're feeling the need to sort of clarify who they are and where their place is in the world. And if I had to guess, and again, this is only a guess, I could be wrong, I often am, it sounds to me like there's a chunk of the John community that's sick of living in caves, and they're going back to the Jewish community. That's what it feels like. The more I read the letter, the more convinced I am of this. They have this phrase in this passage, the ones who left us never really belonged to us. And I think it is all surrounding this issue of Jesus as the Christ, but not that singular belief, right? Was or wasn't Jesus the Messiah? But I think the disagreement is actually over the place of beliefs in general, where they fit. And it's very subtle, but it seems like he's saying there are some who deny that Jesus is the Christ. They're liars. The interesting thing, though, is in the text, the language actually isn't right for sort of a simple, objective, agree or disagree. Is Jesus the Christ? True or false? Like, do you agree or not? Because here, the consistent language is actually not about belief. Instead, it's about possession. It's about what they have. No one who denies the Son has the Father. Whoever acknowledges the Son has the Father also, or the Father, Son, I can't remember how that goes. It's not about believing. It's somehow about having. And we would probably say having an experience. It's not simply an assent to an idea. And this is actually very consistent with the Gospel of John that has shaped this community that's now writing this letter. Jesus, in the Gospel of John, his prayer for his followers and for everyone that would come after him is that they would share the same experience of oneness with one another, an experience of oneness with God, this sort of unified God consciousness that Jesus experienced. So this language, I think about having the Son and having the Father, this is not literal language. We've covered this several times. These are mystics, so this is not literal, biological, parent-child language, like can we DNA test God and make sure Jesus is really the Son, or do like a Maury Povich moment, you are not the Father. No, this is metaphor. These are mystics, right? They're trying to make a point, and so they're using father-son language to describe this oneness, this unity, a sense of connection. It's a metaphor for the experience of oneness. So these authors are saying, I think, to deny Jesus as the Christ, the problem isn't believing this theological idea. Like, let's all take a test, and if you believe right, then you get in. If not, it's evidenced instead by the lack of having this experience. So not the theological idea, but an experience. And especially heartbreaking, I think, and problematic, and I feel like you pick up the tone emotionally in the letter, is it sounds like maybe these folks are leaving and they're going back into the religious, political system that Jesus had critiqued because of its ability to prop up the wealthy and oppress the poor, because of its ability to exclude and marginalize with religious rules and boundary keepers, to shame and denigrate based on disability, gender, sexuality, and religion. This is not the way to unconditional life. In fact, this is an expression of religion at its worst. It is absolutely conditional. And so the sense that I get is the deeper rejection that what they're calling anti-Christ is not merely an agreement or a confession to a belief. Like, have you said the right creed enough times that you really believe it? And this actually, I think, becomes more clear in the final section. But first, I really do want to clarify this. I have many good friends. I shouldn't say many. I have friends who are... I hear what it makes sense. All right. Well played, brain. You got me. I have friends who are Jewish and Muslim and Hindu who do not believe that Jesus is the Christ. And granted, they probably all also have very different understandings on what that even means, and different from my understanding of what that means. But it's not a part of their belief system, let's say. They don't agree with that idea. And I think the cool thing is there are actually even people in this very congregation who are Christians who don't agree with their own understanding of what it means that Jesus is the Christ. They don't believe that. I've gone through many seasons where I've sort of taken that idea out and turned it around and gone, no, I don't actually, that doesn't make any sense. Based on the understanding of Jesus as the Christ that I've been given, there's like a whole theology around that to which I'm an atheist. I don't believe that understanding of what is meant by Jesus as the Christ. And yet, all these folks, who I think, the ones that I know anyway, who maybe don't hold that specific belief, are living lives of love and depth and practice. And they're trying to pursue the unconditional, like justice, hospitality, and grace and mercy and kindness. And so to be very clear, I think people who merely don't believe that Jesus is the Christ, they're not the Antichrist. I don't think that's what this is talking about. Because I think that would then just sort of recreate the same belief-based judgmental exclusion that Jesus was actually critiquing. Right? You don't hold the right beliefs, so you don't belong. When in fact we see in Jesus' encounters over and over with people who believe very differently from him, they're marked by generous welcome, by genuine curiosity. So I think it's not about an objective belief. I think instead it's about life. It's about an experience. It's about a way of being. So the final section says, as for you, see that what you have heard from the beginning remains in you. If it does, you will also remain in the Son and the Father, and there's that same sort of experience of oneness. And this is what he promised us, eternal life. He doesn't say, as for you, just believe really hard that Jesus is the Christ and everything's going to be fine. He comes back to this now very familiar phrase that we've seen over and over in the letter, what you have heard from the beginning. What you've heard from the beginning, from the beginning. We've said over and over, this is the command to love. So he doesn't say, as for you, believe. He comes back to this reference, love, 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 love. And then he clarifies what's meant by having the Son and the Father, this experience of human unity, sacred unity, God consciousness, oneness, and it gets even more clear. This is what he promised you, eternal life, which is sort of reiterating and reinforcing the point of the entire letter. This is from the very introduction to the letter, that this is first and foremost what they're passionate about communicating to these people is an experience. It's a practice. It's a way of being. It's not a belief. So let's think about this in a few different ways, because I want to help us understand this, and we're actually going to have a conversation in a second about this. There's a word here that I think helps us to make sense of this. He uses this word over and over throughout the letter, but he uses it 3 times in this one verse. It says, you know the truth. I do not write to you because you do not know the truth, but because you do know the truth. And we said a few weeks ago, truth here was actually much closer to the English word reality, in the sense that it's not about an objective concept that you can just believe in. It's an experience of the tangible, visceral, verifiable. It is real. It is in this life, in this world. So he's saying, I think, you know what is real. You know what is real. I'm not writing because you don't know what is real. I'm writing because you do know what is real. You know reality. And how do they know? Back to the introduction to the letter. What you've seen, what you've heard, what you've looked at, what you've touched. He's talking about an experience. Throughout the letter, there is this thread, not of correcting beliefs, but of connecting with an experience. So he says, you know. Now, interestingly, I found this fascinating. If we read the Gospel of John, you would hardly find the word know at all. What you would find extensively, almost exclusively in the Gospel of John, is the word believe. Believe, 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 believe. But in the letter of 1 John, which we're reading, you can hardly find the word believe at all. Much more often, in the letter of 1 John, we find the word know. But remember, the Gospel of John is written to people who had no exposure to Jesus, no exposure to Jesus' message. The Gospel is an introduction. It's presenting something and asking people to believe in this. But the letter of John now, written decades later to a well-established community, now very familiar with Jesus' message, they're already practicing, they're already clearly wrestling through what the best ways are that this has worked out. And I think this shift in vocabulary related to audience actually indicates the process of maturity in spirituality. I think this is marking an evolution in the spiritual experience from a posture of believing to an experience of knowing. From the posture of believing something, taking somebody's word for it, to having your own experience. to experiencing something, to experiencing this kind of life that the author keeps talking about. So in 2007, my friend AJ challenged me to my first ever triathlon. It was a sprint triathlon at Camp Winona, and he said, we're going to do this thing, let's train together so we hold each other accountable. He got sick, but I was already like 3 weeks in, so I was like, screw it, I'm going to do it. So I trained and did it alone. We started training. I had done some swimming in high school. I had done a little bit of running. I did not own a bike, but I decided, you know what, I'm going to train. And so I was training at the Hollis Center on one of those like sit-down, reclining, recumbent bikes, not on an off-road mountain bike, which is where I would be riding. I was running on the treadmill, not on sugar sand, which is where I would be running. And I was swimming in a pool, not in a lake where you can't see anything, which is where I would be swimming. So the training wasn't really replicating at all what I was going to experience, but people were telling me, this is what you do to train. Just go and do the things you're going to do. So I started reading, I started talking to people, and I started getting a bunch of advice. And I started to really believe that this was going to be a different experience than anything I'd ever encountered. People were like, oh my God, biking after you swim, it's like crazy. It's, it's exhausting. And the transition between events, several people were like, that's almost like its own discipline. There's like the swimming, biking, and running, but then trying to put your socks on when your feet are wet and covered in sand, that's like another event. So the transition, this should be like a quadrathlon because you have to transition. This was the one that really fascinated me because I started looking at the science and physiology. Running off the bikes, people are like, oh, it's jelly legs, or it's called bricks because you feel like you're running with cement block shoes. And I read this article that said, in fact, running off the bike is a physiologically different sport than running, right? The muscle recruitment is so different from running after you've just been cycling that they said it's a different sport. Like scientists have done this. And then people are like, oh my God, and no matter how much you train, it's going to be awful. Because race day, you've got nerves, and you're competing, and like you've never done it before. And so I read, and I talked to people, and I got advice, and I talked to coaches, and I took into myself these beliefs. I believed them. I started believing all this stuff. But the day the race came, and I survived it, and I got to the other side, I didn't need to believe any of that stuff anymore because I knew. It was horrible. Everything they said, but worse, right? But all those specific things, I didn't need to believe that anymore. I had an experience and I knew. And then it was mine. So I think this is the same for so many things. Like Peter was talking about learning to meditate, right? Learning to sail. I did that when I was in middle school and it was fascinating. Learning to surf. All these things, we can be told a lot of things about it. We can talk to people who are experts in the field. We can read articles. But that's all fundamentally different from having an experience doing the thing that we're talking about or thinking about. When we actually experience it, there is a shift from believing to knowing. And I find it fascinating that the Gospel of John is all about believing something, and this letter is now saying, you know this, right? The author isn't actually really trying to convince them of anything. He's trying to remind them of what they already know, what they've already experienced, who they already are. So let's pause and talk about this, and we'll talk around our tables. I want us to share an example from your life of this kind of shift, from believing to knowing. And so it can be one of these things in general, so learning something and then having the experience for yourself, or then if you want to sort of dive into the specifically kind of pertaining to spirituality or religion or like meditation, like Peter was talking about, something where you've believed something about it but then had an experience and it sort of shifted the way you interacted with it. Some experience of a shift from believing to knowing. So let's take like 5 minutes. House rules apply, no me monsters, everybody gets a voice. If you're not feeling like you want to be a part of a conversation and just kind of do this in your own head and reflect, totally cool. Get with some folks, have some conversation if that's where you're at. We'll come back in a few minutes and share. Go. Oh, sorry, I'll leave that up. All right, let's bring it back. Tractor beam. Clarence knows where his bread gets buttered. Yep. It's happening. All right, let's talk about it. Let's talk about some things. No, you guys just gonna keep talking? Right on. Dave was talking about bobbleheads, so I figured it was time to come back. I have experienced that. All right, let's get a couple of sharers. Anybody want to share? Kate?
I think I've kind of heard a lot of people talking about this, but it's like before you have children, people tell you it's going to be really hard and it's going to change your whole life. But you don't really realize until that little baby's in your arms, and it's so much harder than anybody else.
Yep. Yeah, having kids. That's Yep. So good. So horrifying. Yeah. All right, what else? What else? The shift.
When I first got saved, was this whole Pentecostal thing.
Okay.
And so I believed because I was told I had to believe, right? That whole,
Yeah.
that whole thing. But it wasn't until, and then after that I broke away and started going to a place similar to this, back at Help Start in Indiana, whatever. But I still believed. I didn't know until I started studying and I became an atheist. I got rid of everything that I believed that I don't want to know. And I started applying philosophy. I know, you love my mouth. I started applying philosophy and all of these other traditions and all of these other religions to what I had originally believed. And then at that point, I didn't have to believe. I didn't have to talk about it. I don't have to go out and talk about it because it just is. Just no. I don't need to have these deep discussions with anybody because it just is. So do what you want and I'll do what I want because I know what I know to be real for me. But it wasn't until I got rid of God that I could actually find God.
Beautiful. I can't reiterate all that, but if you're online, you should message Waylon and ask him to email you that.
You want to talk about it?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Nate, bring it.
So, like we talked a little bit about how believing is like a future thing, like to believe kind of like it is like a hope, like we hope for, or we like believe for. So it kind of deals with like the future and like as much as we like to try and plan for the future or like know what's going to happen in the future is kind of like ahead of us and we can never actually be in it until we are. Where knowing is something like to know is like directly related to past, because like you've experienced it, so now you know it. So to have something that's like concrete that you can like look back on is like kind of this comfort.
Cool.
Which I think kind of helps like propel the beliefs. Like if you have a thing that you know that's comfort, then it helps lead to your belief that's propelling you forward.
Very cool. It's profound. I feel like there's something about like the beauty of the tension of the present, like being in the moment, that's held between sort of that what you know of the past, what you believe for the future. Solid. Very cool. Nate, ladies and gentlemen. Larry.
Yeah, that's something like I'm dealing with now is I experience more, some of my beliefs of things are being tested or they don't pan out like I had believed, and the experiences I've had tend to make me, as I mature more, maybe more cynical in some ways. So I have to be constantly rechecking, and my thermometer here remind me of, don't go off the deep end on some things. You got to have the perspectives right, or else you go in the wrong direction. It's like a constant process.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a lot of that, a lot of back and forth for sure. We'll talk about that. Yeah.
I don't know a lot of Greek, I don't know any Greek at all. But one time this teacher told me to look up, I never had a concordance in my hand in my life, and the first time I did, I looked up the word epignosis. And it's the difference between knowledge, gnosis is just knowledge.
Right.
But epignosis in Greek is knowledge by experience.
Yeah.
And I had no clue, but I was like, wow, that really connects with when I met Jesus in the woods when I was 17. I had known of him my whole life. Like, you know that the president is the president.
Right.
But he became my best friend at that point, and it just grew to the point where he's not only my best friend, but he's in me, he's through me, he's with me, he's the eyes that I'm looking out with are his eyes. And there are like no words for this, but I know it
Right.
from experience. I don't just know it because I've read it somewhere and it's up in my head, it's more in my gut.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot. You see that a lot actually in the. I think it might be in chapter 4 in this letter, so we may get to it. But I know like the wedding passage with Paul, where he's talking all about love, and it's actually the whole thing is sort of framed by him trying to articulate the difference between knowing things like you're talking about, like that I can regurgitate on a test because I know a lot of information, versus love as the deepest form of knowledge, that it's relational, kind of first and foremost, which I would say, yeah, it's an experiential kind of thing. Very cool. All right, one more, two more, couple more. Any other good fun ones? I like just the funny ones, like triathlon and other people that have failed miserably, like me. All right, well, we'll stick with parenting. I was thinking, and I asked Peter to kind of do a check-in on the meditation thing, because I was thinking about a lot of my introduction to meditation and silence was through Peter and his introduction in this community. And what I did was what I always do, which is sort of to run to the intellect. And so I did a lot of research, and I looked at the articles, and very quickly was like, oh, I can't deny like the data. Meditation very clearly has these positive physiological, emotional, spiritual effects. And what I learned very quickly is that believing all that stuff had absolutely no effect, unless I was willing to like practice sitting quietly. And so I think that there's a lot of that, I think throughout different facets of our life, but I think especially in religious communities, people tend to gravitate towards like, give me the least common denominator. Like, what are the things that I need to know just to be okay, and not really actually wanting, in many cases, to pursue an experience that challenges like anything about who they are. To be fair, as I'm thinking about this, it's not just, I don't want to say this, it's not just that beliefs change into knowledge with experience. Like, I don't think that it's just like one way and it's that binary, like you believe something until you know it and then it sort of like flips a switch. But I think knowledge actually also changes based on ongoing experience. And so 5 years after I did the first ever sprint triathlon, getting ready for my first Ironman triathlon, did I know the same things that I knew in entirely the same way? No, absolutely not, because I was much more knowledgeable, much more experienced and prepared. And at the same time, though, interestingly, I had a whole new set of beliefs about Ironman triathlon that I was going into because I hadn't done that. And so I needed to sort of confirm or disconfirm those and sort of test and analyze and all that stuff. And I think that's the point. And I think what many of you have said is that I actually think that's the practice, that process, that sort of dynamic back and forth between beliefs and knowledge, that fluid dynamic interplay between beliefs and knowledge, or theories and ideas, and experience. And I think that may actually be maybe one of my favorite definitions, not for faith, I think, because when we talk about faith, I think a lot of times that implies belief in a set of concepts or a set of ideas. Do you have faith in blah, blah, blah? But I like the word faithfulness better because it's not a noun, it's a verb. And it's not fixed, it's dynamic and changing and active. So what if faithfulness or spirituality or religious conviction actually meant the fluid and dynamic interplay between beliefs and knowledge, between theories and ideas, and our experience? And not beliefs in the sense of like, here's all the things that I want you to agree with because the Bible seems like maybe it says it somewhere, but beliefs about how things are, beliefs about reality, beliefs about what actually leads to life. So I heard a story recently about a woman who was pregnant in the 1990s, and she was given a book by her mentor, a book on pregnancy, and the mentor gave it to her, and it was a book that was written in the 70s. So she's reading it now, 20 years later, and she's reading it, and she comes across this passage. Even if you don't normally smoke cigarettes, we recommend that you smoke at least one cigarette per day. During the pregnancy, nicotine has been scientifically proven to relax smooth muscles and help pregnant women. I sometimes wonder if people will tune into the live stream at just the wrong moment. Like, what the hell kind of church is this? So we look at that and we go, man, it's amazing how much changed from the 70s to the 90s, and here we are 25 years later. What was scientifically proven in the 70s was rubbish. By the 90s, it was totally ridiculous. So this realization, I think, that science routinely gets its cherished facts wrong, I think actually can help us imagine a more generous way for people of faith or spiritual practitioners relating to our cherished beliefs. So science is deeply interested in facts, determining, organizing, and then presenting for use in practical ways. And religion has a similar relationship in history with beliefs. To determine what's acceptable, it's called orthodox, organizing, presenting, and then using them in practical ways. We call these practices, but this is the key difference. Science's deepest loyalty is not to the facts, that it currently proclaims. Rather, it pledges its deepest loyalty to a method, pledges its deepest loyalty to a practice, to an engagement with the world. The scientific method is experimentation, observation, measurement, tweaking. This claims priority over anything we might think today is scientific fact. And I love this. This gets me so excited. You know where the scientific method begins? This is fascinating. Mystery. Scientists start as mystics because they've got a set of data, or they have some observations, or they have phenomena that they cannot explain. They start with mystery, and then they develop hypotheses and possible explanations for the mystery, and then they subject it to repeated experimentation, and then if they confirm it, they consider it a tested theory. And if over a long period of time it's not refuted, if it's repeatedly confirmed, then it becomes thought of as a scientific fact, and it shows up in lectures, and it shows up in textbooks, and it shapes practical, right, everyday stuff, from how we grow and store food, to how we build bridges, to how we build rockets and think about, going to Mars. But sometimes, and this is what I love, and I think we're actually in one of these seasons in the life of, I think, religion in general, but specifically Christianity in the West, sometimes new evidence arises. Sometimes there's the understanding that a new mystery has appeared, and it calls these long-assumed facts into question. And so in science, what happens is the facts are then just demoted back to theories. They're demoted back to hypotheses. They're not thrown out entirely, they're tested again, over and over. And they go, did we really get this right? Well, let's check it again. I want to make sure you caught that. When scientists, working in fidelity to the scientific method, produce results that undermine long-established facts, they subvert the facts in order to preserve loyalty to the method. They are more in love with their method. They are more in love with their practice than their facts. And rather than discrediting science, I actually think this is what gives science its greatest credibility. This relentless pursuit of the truth, or John's community, they would say, relentless pursuit of reality, how things are, because of this deeper loyalty. So the continuity of science is not in the certainty of facts, but in the consistency of practice. What would happen if we just swapped out the word science? The continuity of faith is not in the certainty of facts, but in the consistency of practice. The continuity of spirituality is not in the certainty of facts, but the continuity or the consistency of practice. The continuity of life. The continuity of life is not in the certainty of facts, which will inevitably change, but in the consistency of practice. And I think, let me say this, I hope this is what the passage is about. And honestly, if it's not about this, then I probably don't agree with what the passage is saying. But I think and I hope that this is where the passage is landing. That this injunction against the Antichrist, as much as, especially in this election cycle, as much as we might want this clear definition and line in the sand of people that believe ABC, they're in, and people that believe XYZ, they're out because of the facts. I think this world that we're being sold by fearmongers and capitalism and the political theater that we're living through, I think what's actually being said here has less to do with a particular belief or a fact as the truth, and more to do with the method or the practice of love. And so then the Antichrist is not the one who refuses just to believe that Jesus is the Christ, but instead refuses to practice the way that Jesus revealed. Not belief, not I agree in my head with what you're saying or what the letter says or whatever, but love, unconditional life. Some experience of the oneness of all things. The melting away of these divisions and binaries that create so much hate and violence and inhumanity. And it is not so simple as that binary belief, yes or no. And I think the final passage is what he's saying. I think he's saying, hold on to what you've known from the beginning, which we've said over and over and over. He's referring to love. Hold on to what you've known from the beginning, this command to love. Practice this by union with God and all people, all things. This is what Jesus intended. This is what Jesus called by the name of eternal life. This kind of life, this kind of love, this depth of experience, he's not talking about beliefs or facts. I think he's talking about a deeper loyalty to a method, to a practice, to an experience of life, where we can actually come to know this so that we don't have to worry so much about believing the right thing on the list. And like science, like any great journey, like this method, this practice, this experience, I think, and again, I hope, and this has been true for me and I think for many people in the room, this is in large part an experiment. It's an experiment, right? Especially in this congregation, because we don't come together every week to celebrate that we've got it all figured out, right? We come together because we don't know what the hell we're doing, right? But we're pretty sure that there's life here. There's life somewhere in this, and we're going after that together because we want to know together. I think that leads to growth, right? When we experiment, when we measure, when we observe, when we make tweaks, when we ask, is it working, right? I keep sitting silently, and it doesn't seem like it's working. Well, keep doing it, right? Keep running that experiment. Something might happen. I think this is what leads to growth, to development, to this increasingly clear picture of life and reality. And in this process, will beliefs form? Will they grow and change and fall away and give way to new beliefs? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's how it works. But I think where the deeper loyalty is to the method and the practice and the process, there is the deepest and widest and fullest and most vital experience of life. And this is what he promised us, the right beliefs. No. This is what he promised us, eternal life. A depth and kind and quality of life that we can actually know because we're living it. It is not confined to a list of beliefs. We can know this. We can experience it. I want to share this quote by a guy called Jeff Robbins as we set the table for the Eucharist. And I've got it on the slide because it's good, but it's dense. So maybe I'll read it twice. We'll see how the room feels after I get through it the first time. This guy's really sharp, though. I love this. And I've been sitting on this for I think I've probably had this for 6 or 7 months. But I was like, you know what? The week's going to come, and this is going to be right. And it's tonight. That was twice in there. The love of God is a love without category, or better, a love that exceeds all categorizations, whether religious or secular, whether theist or atheist, and whether Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Jewish, etc. The death of God, as pronounced by the Enlightenment, is not the final word, and religion is more fundamentally about desire. Even or especially when our old beliefs have been worn away or stripped apart, whether it is by the brutalities of modern life to which we have all become spectators, or more complexly still, the pretense of self-sufficiency. God is the, or at least one, name that we give to this desire. And religion is the, or at least one, means by which it takes institutional form. But even when the name rings hollow and the form grows stale, it is the event of desire that stirs beneath that we still strive to articulate, that we still mean to affirm. I'm just going to read it once. That's it. So when we break the bread and pour this cup, when we remember not the belief in, but the life of, the way, this experience that's harbored in the name of God or harbored in the life of Christ, when we remember what was dismembered, body separated from blood. Remember, meaning that we begin to practice this in our own body, communally. We set the table of this good gift around the event of that desire that the quote was talking about. A desire that stirs beneath belief. This unconditional desire that fuels and funds the quest for reality, for oneness, for the light of goodness and unconditional love. We set the table around this love without category, the love that exceeds all categorizations. We set the table not because we ever have, or we do tonight, or we ever will, all believe the same things in the same way. It has never happened, and I can basically guarantee you it never will. There will not come a night where we all believe all the same things in the same ways. Instead, we set the table because the experience of life is deeper and more enduring than all of our beliefs and all of our facts. And so we set the table around this deeper loyalty to our method, to our practice, to our process and journey as a laboratory of love, as a school of love. Once again, the table has been set for us tonight. It is open to us and to all people, and no one will ever be turned away. If you'd like, when you're ready, you can come and rip a piece of bread and dip it in the cup.
Be the light in the crack. Be the one that's been near the camel's back. So bang, quick to let be more hard, less attack.
Be the wheel, not the drive. Be the wonder that's coming back. Leave the past right where it's at. Be more heart and less attack.
More you see, less you have. 'Cause it's you in the mirror staring back. Quick to let, slow to react. Be more hard, less attack.
Ever growing, steady rise, and you need be the one that's in the gap. Be the never turning back. Twice the heart any man has.
Be the light in the crack. where it said, be more hard and less inside. Be more hard and less inside. Be more hard and less inside.
You can sign up for the weekly or give at the Support and Connect table by the door. If you're our guest and would like to get to know us a bit better, we'd love to connect in the back near the bar. Come chat. If you want more on weekly community groups, download the app, check Facebook or email. Info at wearecollectivechurch.com. After the benediction, please help us break down for Yoga Chapel. Thanks for being here with us and online. Your presence makes us who we are. Brian McLaren says, if enough individuals are full of despair and anger in their hearts, there will be violence in the streets. If enough individuals are full of greed and fear in their hearts, there will be pollution in the rivers and toxins in the air. If enough individuals are full of supremacy and privilege in their hearts, there will be racism and oppression in society. As we examine this world which our beliefs have created, or at least allowed, as we approach an election with a sinking feeling of unease and the now deafening ringing in our ears, from the fever pitch of anger and vitriol, may we set to one side that which we claim to believe and pledge again our deepest loyalty to the method of love, to the practice of peace, to the school of kindness, and to the conviction of justice and hospitality for everyone. Grace and peace.